So next up, we've got Tim Wolf here with Netafim. Tim is an agronomist for Netafim. He's been helping us really since we started and has been a big part of our success and helping us learn. And he's going to share with us some of the new things that we've been working on over the past year or two. And I think it's something that we need to take a look at. As we looked at soil moisture probes, they have a place. They show you what's happening in one part of the field. But what about the rest of the field? How do we manage where we're not measuring? And so that's where I think imaging has a big role in that. And so Tim's going to share some of those tools.
Thank you, Kurt, for that introduction. And it's been one of the great pleasures of mine to be able to work with the organization from 10 years ago, starting out with just a couple of you to a beautiful organization that includes many, many, many more folks. So like Kurt said, my few minutes with you today, I want to talk about something that we're piloting. It's not fully baked yet, so we aren't offering it as a product, but we've learned a lot, and I want to share with you what we've learned and where we think it fits, and would love input from you on if you agree with us that it fits, or if there's some other things that we need to look for or look at that will make this better. So it was fun to listen to the conversation right before lunch that had soil moisture probes in the discussion, because that's where we started. Soil moisture probes, we love them. They're a fantastic sensor to measure soil moisture. And the other thing that Kurt talked about this morning was tissue testing, a fantastic way to measure nutrient density in the plant or soil testing in the soil. And as Kurt said in the introduction, is there a way that we can pull together that information that we already know that is more mature and we have accepted it as part of our operation, and look at the entire field? And so I put this image up. We've determined that we want a soil moisture probe and tissue test in this part of the field and one in this part of the field. And we can do a beautiful job with that spot because we have that information. But what do we do with the rest of the field? How do we manage that? David talked about finding a representative spot to put the soil moisture probe. That's certainly a goal, and we still want to do that. However, is there a way that we can transfer that information into the entire field? Hopefully, when I finish, you have some idea of what we're trying to do. Just to review quickly, moisture probe gives us actual moisture with multiple depths with the sensors on the probe. We can measure consumption, or the difference between what it takes each day. We can actually measure that, and it's real time. We can log in and see it within an hour or two. Some of the weaknesses, you only have that single point to measure it. The installation and the cost with imagery, it's full daily images, and we're going to look a little bit about, different image offerings. Some are daily, high resolution, others are once a week. We want to be able to quantify change. A lot of the imagery has just been color. Dark green is good, yellow is medium, red is bad, just like your yield maps. And it is less money overall. It's so much an acre. There are multiple bandwidths. I'll talk about some of that. Some of the weaknesses is the quantification of difference. I can see green. I'm not colorblind. I can see green, yellow, and red. But what happens within that green spectrum? Can we quantify a difference between the different green? And I can look at it and I think I know what I'm seeing, but can I assign a number to that? And that's one of the things that I want to show you. What we've been able to do is assign a number, because I'm a numbers guy. I'm an agronomist. I'm a numbers guy. I want a number. So quantification of difference. And the other challenge is regularity of images. With regular Sentinel satellites, it's once a week, once every 10 days. If there's clouds, it may not be as often. And there are some new images that we can get almost on a daily basis that offer a lot more information and don't leave me with holes that I don't want to get behind on my crop. There's NDVI, which is biomass, plant health, or vigor. And how does that changing? Is my crop improving through the year? What's the trend? Is there a spot within the field or within the season that going backwards? And I have the perfect system to react to that, whether it's water or nutrients or whatever. So NDVI is one of the major images. There's modified NDVI that when a crop is small and you get some reflectance from the soil, it can sort that out. So we use that image when the crop is small. CCCI is a chlorophyll, darkness of color. A healthy green plant is going to be healthier, and differentiating that, putting a number on that will help us to manage. And then this red edge imagery is chlorophyll plus NDVI. So it's a little bit more advanced of chlorophyll or nitrogen management. So these are the 4 images that the crop advisor has selected to use. The frequency, and this is a big difference that I'm really excited about, the high definition one. So I'll spend most of my time talking about the high definition one. It's about 1 to 3 meters pixel size, or the color. It comes every 1 to 2 days. So I get a lot of images to work with to assign trends that have numbers associated with it. It's not just color, because I can look at a yield map and go, golly, that's a great yield map. That's a great field if it's all green. But if the scale is all green from 100 bushels to 200 bushel or 100 bushel to 300 bushel, so it assigns a number. I really like that. So the example that we'll use is a field that Travis actually worked with last year that I'm going to use as an example of where we feel like we can add value. We were able to gather 51 images through the year, from planting, which is in late April, to senescence or maturity around September 10th. A lot of data. So we can see change, we can measure change. The default on this is 5% cloud cover. So with 5% cloud cover, we got 51 images last season. That's a lot of data. We can play around with, last year was a pretty dry year in this particular field. I pushed the cloud cover up to 75% cloud cover, and I only added 4 more images. So didn't really make a big difference in that scenario. But the take home message here is, when I do daily images, I get a lot of images, and seeing the difference, seeing the trend is where the value is. The standard definition is about 4x that. The images come through every 5 to 7 days. So within that 5 to 7 days, I'm hungry for data. I didn't get any rain, my irrigation pump went down, or something happened, and I want the data. I want to know what to do. The standard definition does add value, but not as much value as high definition. This last year, for this same exact field with the same default settings, I got 14 images. So significantly less data. So there's some differences for you to think about as we through this. So just a couple other things about the tool. We can do multiple fields, and one satellite can do your whole farm. We have all the different images, and each day, some of these are high definition, some of these are standard definition, but it gives you the days and the images that you can compare if you want to compare one to the other or see trends. And I'm going to talk about trends in a minute. And then the relative scale. And like I said before, it's a little bit like a yield map. Green is with NDVI 1.0 is perfect or ideal. And in this example, and this happens to be Grimm's pivot just north of here in 2022, the poorest area of the field was 0.86 and the best area of the field was 0.9. So there's not a lot of variability. If you look at that, it looks like, oh my gosh, that's a crop disaster. And that is perfect because it's dark green and it's red. That's 0.04 difference. So you need to understand the relative nature of the information as well. So a couple other things that I'm very excited about, and to me differentiates our images from a lot of the other offerings. Are any of you guys looking at imagery from your seed companies? I know there's a lot of guys that'll use some of the free images. They offer some nice pictures and you can learn from them. But to me, if I can look at where is the NDVI throughout the growing season along the bottom, and how does it compare? So you probably can't see, there's a green pin right here that represents the green graph line, and there's an orange one right here in the red area of the map. And again, this is that same map that I looked at a minute ago that has very little relative difference. So in this, with very little relative difference, they track very closely to the average of the field. So we can quantify and look at what are the trends, an improving trend, and then a leveling off, which is pretty good because we're nearly at 1. So this is a really nice field that did a beautiful job of minimizing stress. So let's jump into the field that I wanted to spend the most time at. Okay, a little background, good rains. The irrigation system was keeping up really nicely in the early part of the season. The map looked relatively nice and green for the entire field. These yellow areas is an ability for the tool to identify areas that are different than the average. So it does this automatically. So it looks at an area and says, you need to pay a little bit of attention because this is different than the average. It does that automatically, so you don't have to be looking for or have pins all over in this entire field. In this particular field, they had a soil moisture probe and tissue samples were taken right here, and another one over in this area of the field. And so we have those two charted in the analytics portion. So I can track how did the vigor, how did the plant health do from planting on the 27th of April to this particular date on the chart, which is Independence Day, 4th of July. Everything looked pretty good. Everything was growing. Everything was on a nice trend. So as a grower, things are going well. I'm really happy with things. As we go through the season, 1 month later, if you look at the color of the map, it's changing slightly, but color-wise, it still looks pretty good, doesn't it? But let's analyze, what do the numbers say? So from that exact same point on that blue dot that we looked at before, it's going up, and then it went back down, and then it's kind of leveling off. So it was up here on the 4th of July, on the 4th of August, we're down here in this particular area, in the red dot area. And again, you can monitor or you can add those dots or areas of information. You can do as many of those as you want. It gets awfully busy, and you can turn them on and off if you want. The other thing that the software allows us to do is to look at what is the actual number. On the 4th of August, things really tanked. And they had some challenges with water. The pump wasn't able to deliver what they needed. And so they were using this tool to go to the area in the field that was of most need. So they would use this tool and say, okay, this area of the field looks like it's changed the most in the last 2 or 3 days. Let's move the water to that zone or move the water to this zone. And because they were limited, and I'm not saying that you have to have a limited water situation to bring the value of the tool out. What I'm saying is it gives you the ability to look at the entire field. So if the soil moisture probe was still in a really nice green area, the soil moisture might say, I'm still happy, but the plant above that was saying something very different, and it was quantifying. And so this dropped, and I'm going to go back on the 4th of July. It was at about 0.8. on the NDVI scale. By the 4th of August, we were at about 0.32. So there was a decline. You can look at this every day or two because there's a new image coming in. I'm just jumping ahead to give you an idea. I didn't want to go through every single image, but it gives you an idea of, I don't have to necessarily see it's green, so it's good. Green is good. It gives me an actual number that signifies what is happening in that particular area. And again, I don't have to have a soil moisture probe. I don't have to have 30 soil moisture probes out there. I can use a couple of reference areas and utilize the information in the image to translate that information out a little bit further. So let's jump to the chlorophyll. And we already looked at the NDVI. What did the chlorophyll do? Again, the chlorophyll in the blue area right here was still pretty good, still at 0.9, but what happened after that point in a very few days, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. At the red area here, the chlorophyll or the color or the nitrogen management was still pretty good, even in early August. We were still doing a pretty good job with the nitrogen management based upon the numbers, but things changed rapidly. And let me go to the next one, which is only 2 weeks. Then it started showing up on the actual pictures. So without the quantification of the numbers, if I was just looking at the color, I wouldn't have done anything until now. And there was many opportunities that I could have done prior to that based upon these charts or trends. So again, that blue area started to drop out, and the orange area, looking at the color, still is relatively green. The orange area in chlorophyll leveled off, so the chlorophyll or the nitrogen management still is pretty good, but over in this area, it really tanked. So understanding that I'm starting to step down, looking at tissue samples, looking at actual plants, could I have done more? In this field, we're limited on water, but if you have the water, we could have reacted. And you have a beautiful system with your drip that you can add water every day. You can add nutrients every day. You have the ability to do management from that point. I wanted to leave you with the thought that we're still big believers in soil moisture probes. We're still big believers in soil testing and tissue testing. And I think this tool can add additional value with utilizing the regular images.